Well, good morning. Thanks for being here with us. My name's Ryan, one of the pastors here at Grace, and I would love to meet you if we haven't met yet, and maybe hear how you made your way to the campus today. But excited about what's coming up here, and of course, we're in Christmas season, and lots happening that way. And the biggest thing I want to point out is that Christmas Eve services are coming soon. And so as you're making your Christmas Eve plans, make sure to tune in to those service times. It's going to be a Thursday, and 1 on Thursday, and then 3 on Christmas Eve. And make sure to choose one of those that makes sense to you. And I think it's going to be a ton of fun. It's also a great time to invite friends. If you've maybe been thinking about inviting somebody, Christmas is still kind of a natural time that you might say, hey, I think if I'm going to go to church, I might go around Christmas time. So take advantage of that, and make sure to invite friends or family or neighbors that you may be connecting with this holiday season. Also want to make sure you know the Sunday after Christmas Eve, we are not having services on that Sunday. I want to make sure you all heard that. So, right, if you come here, there will be no people here, right? There's going to be no service that day. So make sure to make a note that day and catch up with us after the first of the year. And coming into January, in those first few weeks of January, as we get kicked off here, we're going to be starting a new series that I'm really excited about. And you're going to make sure to prioritize that coming into those first few weeks of January as we kick off a new series called Made New. And excited about where that's headed. And I would just encourage you to try to carve out some space to be around here as we kick off the new year. So very excited about all those things and encourage you to kind of jump in on all of them. And we started a Christmas series last few weeks now. It's called From Heaven to Earth. And we said we're just going to take some time and really look at kind of the profound nature of what God did at Christmas. And we said that there's all kinds of stuff happening at Christmas. The whole kind of tone of our culture tends to shift around Christmas time. And I kind of shared my story over the last few weeks with you guys, for me personally with Christmas, that it's possible, because I lived this, to celebrate Christmas, to celebrate and have a tree and have lights and have presents and have gifts and have Santa and have nostalgia and have warm, the whole thing, and have snow, and do all that and not have any recognition at all that Christmas is actually about Jesus. That was, in many ways, that was my experience. I did all of Christmas, right? And it's all good, nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But I personally, because I didn't grow up learning or knowing about Jesus, I never really knew that Christmas was about the birth of Christ. I thought it was just about all the other stuff, right? And the stuff is really a celebration of this amazing thing that God did at Christmas, all right, with the birth of Jesus when he sent his son. And we said, we just want to take some time and really look at that, all right? Look at the reality of what God did when he sent Christ from heaven to earth. And we said when Jesus came, what came with him was a profound impact on the planet and what's available to us. And we talked through kind of the hope of what Jesus brings. Last week, we looked at peace and the reality that Jesus brought a peace to us that wasn't available before. And if you missed any of those conversations, you can catch up online and kind of watch those or listen to them if you want. Our YouTube channel is probably one of the better places to get all of that info and conversations. And what we're going to do today is dive into really, I think, kind of the center point of what drove Christmas. And that is ultimately going to be the love of God, right? His love for us. And we're going to take a good hard look at love, and a love that is available, of course, in a way that it hasn't been available before. And love is a word. I know even as I say that, we're going to hear love in a bunch of different ways because we use that word to mean all kinds of things, right? So we're going to say in the same kind of conversation, you might say, I love my wife or my kids or my husband or my boyfriend or girlfriend, or I love pizza and I love Jesus and I love Ohio State, or whatever you love, right? Whatever your thing is. And we would use that word kind of broadly, and what we mean by it is a bunch of different things. And there's a definition and an approach to love and kind of a biblical word given for love that we're going to zero in on and look at kind of one piece of what that love really is when we're talking about the love of God, the unique love of God and kind of what that means. And here's a starting point for us. We look at love and the Greek word, which is one of the languages that the Bible was originally written in. Agape is the word love that we're going to look at a bit. It's this choosing to love someone completely for the benefit of the person being loved. This is the idea of love, right? When God is choosing to love us completely for our benefit, right? There's not a gain. There's not being reciprocated. There's not I'm doing this so you do this back for me. It's totally for the benefit of the person being loved. And if we're honest, this is kind of a foreign and a unique love in many ways to us because it's kind of rare that we would bump into this kind of love where it's really selfless at a very deep level. And God has chosen to love us that way. And we want to love like this. We want to be loved like this. We want to give and receive this love in our relationships. But if we're honest, right, it's kind of a challenge sometimes to love this way. We're all good for it for a while, and then there's like usually a bump or two that causes us to struggle in some ways. I'll give you an example. So I've got 4 kids, and this week my kids and my wife went to a Christmas party, and they were able to bring home some leftover Christmas cookies. I like Christmas cookies. I like them a lot. And when extra cookies come home into my house, I immediately think in a very strange way. I'm a strange person, just so you know, right? And I think to myself, there's 12 cookies in this box. I'm going to budget out a certain number of those for myself. These are exciting to me. I love Christmas cookies. And I think to myself, I'm a generally responsible-ish person, and I don't want to eat them all at once. I want to enjoy the cookies over many days, a multitude of days, right? And so I think to myself, I think I'm going to have 3 cookies over the next 3 days. And so I have one, and then the next day, my cookie is still there, my day 2 cookie, and I have that cookie, and I enjoy it, and it brings great joy to my soul. And then day 3 comes, and I'm waiting. I've saved the best for last. It's a beautiful, pink-looking little cake pop. Ooh, it looks so good, and I was waiting for it. And I went to find the cake pop that I had dreamt about and thought about. And do you know where the cake pop was? I don't know. It was gone. And I went on a rampage. Where has my cake pop gone? What child has devoured this? Right? Did you do it? Did you do it? And right? And I try to find the monster that took my cake pop. And I love my children and my family until you take my cake pop. And now it's fighting words, right? We got an issue now. And we laugh about it and play with it, but it's kind of true, right? I'm good to love you totally for your benefit until it blocks my goals. And then it starts to change a little bit, right? Until you take what I want, or you mess with my kid, or you make me mad, or you have an opinion that is against my opinion. Now, all of a sudden, to love you totally for the benefit of you being loved gets very challenging very, very, very quickly, right? And that's kind of the human response as we interact with love. And the thing that's amazing about this kind of love that we're going to be talking about today is God somehow is relentlessly consistent in his ability to love like this. And it's so foreign in his consistency and his ability to love like this that it's kind of mind-blowing, and it takes a little while for us to get our head around it. But I'm going to dive into a chapter of the Bible, 1 John chapter 4. And if you have a Bible, you can open up to 1 John 4. If you don't have a Bible with you and you want to follow along, you can open up the Bibles that are right there in front of you in the chairs. In fact, if you want to take one of those with you and make that our gift to you, take that with you, please. We'd love for you to have a physical copy of the Bible that you can call yours, write your name in it, highlight it, use it, whatever. But we're going to be in 1 John 4. We're going to bounce around a little bit in this chapter and learn a little bit of the Apostle John. He's a leader in the early church who would have known Jesus and lived with him personally. And he's an older guy now, and he's given us some great perspective on love and really on life. And here's what he's going to say in 1 John 4:7. As we kick this off a little bit, it says this: "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God." Okay, he's just going to boil this down. He's going to say, hey, let's love each other, right? And the love that he has in mind is the one we just talked about. Let's love each other. Let's love each other completely for the benefit of the other one, like that. This isn't the kind of love where we just feel nice about each other or nice to each other when we're feeling like being nice and we agree and everything is cozy and warm. This is love each other completely for the benefit of the person being loved. And he says this love comes from God. It is from him. He's the originator of love. And he says that we should do this because this is where love is sourced from. It flows from him. Let us do the same thing in essence that God is doing. And then he kind of defines it a little bit later in the passage. Look at what he says here in 4, 9, and 10. He says, this is how God showed his love among us, right? So God gives us love. What's that look like? This is how he did it. He sent his one and only son into the world that we might live through him. He goes on and clarifies more. This is love. Not that we loved God, right? Not that we would look at God and be so righteous and holy or religious that we would be able to show our love to God first. Not that, but that he loved us and he sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Here's what he's saying. He's saying God loved us so much, right, completely for our benefit, that what he did is he would give his son, right? He says, you want to know what love looks like? Love looks like Christmas. That is the picture of love. If I want to get my head around what God is like and what love is like, all I have to do is see what God gave at Christmas, and I start to understand part of the heart and the mind and the motivation of God, of what he's like. Let's say it this way. Christmas is God's permanent illustration of his love for us, right? Christmas is God's permanent illustration of his love for us. All I have to do is look at Christmas. And as I stare at Christmas and the reality that God would be willing to send his son from heaven to earth to this planet, humble himself to be here in our midst, that movement alone cements for me the reality that God loves me, that he is for me, that he's not against me. And part of the hard part about this for us as human beings is because this whole thing right here that we just talked about, right? God and his love and his giving nature and that culminating at Christmas, all of that is so foreign. And the love of God is so foreign that as we live life here on the planet, we have some trouble interpreting what God is doing here, and we have some trouble receiving what God is giving here. Here's what I mean, right? So here's you and me, the recipients of Christmas, right? We're the ones that benefit from Christmas. We're part of why Christmas was happening, right? Is God wants to make himself known and build relationship with us since it's been severed because of our actions. And he says, I want to know you and be with you. But as we look up at this, right, as we say, what is going on here? Sometimes, often, I would even say, we have some trouble interpreting this. And there's reasons for that are very real. Because you and I, when we live life, we have, most of us, many of us, probably all of us, have trusted people in our lives, and we've put our faith and our trust in their intentions or their motivations to find that those motivations or intentions have failed us. We relied on people and that they didn't come through for us. We heard the voice of someone and trusted that voice, and then that voice failed. And now what happens is we're left in a place where we're not quite sure Who do I trust? Whose voice do I listen to? I've got a kind of a broken trust mechanism when it comes to people moving towards me. There certainly has to be strings attached, right? God has to be doing something different here than what it looks like, because when most people show this kind of intentionality in moving towards me, usually there's something sinister behind it. And we almost can't help but superimpose that on our view of God. Let me give you an example how this looked for me. When I was a kid, like probably many of us, in elementary school, man, I struggled. I struggled big time with being bullied as a little kid. I was little, and I was an only child, and I was weird, and so I got bullied sometimes by this group of kids. And it was frustrating, and it made me not want to go to school. And I'm like, man, this is rough, right? And I had this interaction in elementary school, and I was trying to find my way, and I was a little standoffish with certain sets of kids now because I've had these set of interactions. Well, long story short, right, is I ended up changing schools, right? And I went, picked me up, put me in a different school. And now I've got a different set of kids now that I'm getting to know. And I'm the new kid. And I'm the new kid, and there's a set of kids that decided that they were going to be kind to me. And they decided to reach out to me because they were awesome kids. And they went up, right, kind of walked across the room and said hi, and hey, I'm so-and-so, and what's your name? And they started to try to befriend me. And do you know what I did with them? I couldn't receive their friendship. I couldn't receive their generosity. I stiff-armed them. Why? Because I thought for sure these kids were just like these kids back here at the other school, and they were just trying to trick me, and they were just going to talk about me behind my back and try to make fun of me, right, and loop me and rope me into some kind of scheme that ultimately would be for my harm. I had a hard time trusting, right, because of hurt. When you and I live life here on this planet, there is an enormous amount of brokenness. Enormous. There is disease and fractured relationships and people failing us left and right. I mean, you don't have to live here very long to feel some of the brokenness of our planet. And what starts to happen with that brokenness is sometimes we begin to assign that brokenness to God. How did God let this happen to me? How did God allow these circumstances? If God is real, would he really let this start to play out? And what starts to happen is the illustration of God's love for us starts to be clouded. It gets foggy. And all of a sudden, that gift starts to be suspect to us. Well, maybe God sent Jesus here to destroy us. Maybe God's looking at my life and he's allowing these things to happen in my life because he's mad at me, or he hates me, or he no longer has my best interest in mind. I don't know, if I can trust this God. And we don't always have it that clear in our heads, but something like that is going on. And it would trace back to the divorce that we were raised in, or the thing that happened, or the person that died, or the person that lied, and we would assign some of that, and we would wonder, is God's love legit? And is his gift of Christmas for real? Can I actually believe in that? Can I put my faith in that? Is God actually for me, or is he against me? Is that why Jesus came? And some of us have had religious experiences even at church, where people have looked at the justice of God, which is real and true, and they have looked and said, God is mad at you, and he knows that you've sinned, and he's going to punish you. And if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell, right? And all these things. And is sin real? Yes. Is hell real? Yes. Is God's justice real? Yes. And the motivation and the heartbeat and the posture of God is not angry judge. That's not where he is right now. Will he come in judgment one day? Yeah, he will. But what he's doing right now, what's on the table today, is something much more merciful and passionate and compassionate towards us. His love is on the table. Listen to what John says to us in John 3, very familiar verse, John 3, 16 to 17, but hear it with fresh ears. For God so loved the world that he gave. He gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Listen, this next one. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Man, did you hear that? What's the motivation? What's the driver? It's God's love. What's Christmas about? Christmas is a rescue mission. Did Jesus come to condemn? No. Did Jesus come to destroy us? No. What he came for is he came for mercy and forgiveness and relationship. He came and he wants us, instead of running away from him, instead of rebelling further against him, instead of mistrusting him, he wants us to look at the gift and move towards it. Move towards it. Simple. And when I begin to move towards the gift, what will start to happen is that gift will begin to change me from the inside out. Listen, there's nothing more powerful than the love of God. There's nothing. God's love for you and I will alter us if we allow it to, if we receive it for what it is. And it doesn't make sense, and it's not super logical. The point of all of why God came and why he revealed himself to us is not so we could have a religious system. It's not so that we could become elitist theologians. It's not so we could have arguments about theology and religion. It's not so we could dominate a political party. Hear me. The point of why he came is he came for you. He came for me. He came to forgive you. He knows what you did. He knows what I did. He knows where we've been. He didn't need us. He's not looking at us and saying, well, man, you're really awesome, and so that I want you on my team. He's not looking at us saying, wow, you've really blown it and you've done horrible wrong, so I'm going to get rid of you like everybody else did. He's looking at us and saying, I don't care how talented you are or how wicked you've been. I am choosing to love you. I'm for you. I'm not against you. When I begin to receive that, maybe for the first time or continually throughout a lifetime, I stop trying to move away from God. That alters me. And here's what starts to happen. Listen to what John says in 4:7-8. He says, everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. See, a huge piece of what we're talking about today when we talk about the love of God is this isn't just something that God is doing. He's not just offering love. He is love. This is his person. This is who he is. And this God of love is moving towards us. And does he know about sin? Yeah, he paid a high price, the price of his Son, to pay for it. And he's big enough, and he's merciful enough, and he's sacrificial enough to pay for our sin and to pay for it completely. So you don't have to be good enough, because you can't, to earn it. And you can't be holy enough or religious enough to earn it. It doesn't matter how many good things you've ever done. Nothing can match or compare or replace the sacrifice of Jesus that began at Christmas. The ultimate act of the God of love. It says, when I begin to understand and know that, it transforms me. And what John would tell us is that starts to transform me as a person, then what happens is love not only affects my life, it starts to pour out of my life. It overflows from me, and I start to become a person of love. Imperfectly, right? In and out, up and down, right? We'll fail half the time, but love starts to come from my life more and more and more when I say yes to him. Here's how he would say it. Dear friends, since God so loved us, he says, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. He says, as I start to receive it more and more, God's love will begin to go through a process of completing its work in me, and that work will become more and more complete in me as love starts to come out of my life into the lives of other people. This is huge, right? And here's the big point, right? God didn't love us for us alone. He gave us his love so that we can love like he does. See, he wants us to join him in the joy of loving. He wants us to be able to experience what it's like to give ourselves away just like he does. Now, I did a funeral yesterday for somebody kind of connected to our church here. Super inspiring, man. The lady who had passed, she had lived a simple and generous life. It was amazing to me and inspiring to me as I watched family member after family member get up here on this stage and talk about the generosity of their mom or their grandma or their wife. And they would tell stories about how her and her husband would go, and they would go out to eat, and they would secretly buy lunch or buy dinner for somebody across the restaurant and watch with joy as that person discovered that somebody else paid for their meal and they didn't know it, who and where it came from. And that they did that kind of stuff all the time, and that they were learning about those kinds of things more and more as the stories kind of came out. And you're not going to know her name, and there'll never be a plaque or a monument made in her name. She'll never make anybody's top 20 list of most effective right? It's not going to happen. But somewhere, somehow, that woman somehow was able to get a hold of the love of God for her. Somehow she made the connection. She wasn't trying to earn her way to heaven, or she knew where she stood with the Lord. And as she received that love in her life, the natural response was to give that and to share that with the people around her. She learned what Jesus said when he said it's more blessed to give than to receive. See, God doesn't want to just give us his love. That's part of it. He wants more than that for us. He wants us to be able to experience what it's like to give love. It's the most powerful thing we can give our lives to. No invention, no accomplishment, no empire building, no net worth can compare to living a life of love. Why? Because when I'm living a life of love, I'm experiencing the God of the universe, and I'm experiencing his love flowing through me. And you guys got to see this next verse. This just jumped off the page to me this week. Right? Here's your tattoo verse for the week. Here's 1 John 4:16. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. Man, hear that. Hear that. As we're living life, as the gift of Christmas and the love of God starts to get cloudy, and we start to wonder, is God still good? Is he still for me? Did he leave me? Am I mistaken? As this starts to cloud up on us, and it's going to, what John says is, listen, know and rely on the love of God and that how he has chosen to love us, right? On the love of God for us. Rely on it, lean into it, experience it. When I wonder about who I'm becoming, when I wonder if my life is amounting to anything. At this time of year, as the year wraps up, typically most of us will start to float into some level of reflection mode. And we start to think about our life just at a little bit higher level. The year is over, another year begins. And when we start to wonder, where's this thing all headed? And am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And am I enough? The landing point that Christmas brings us back to is to know and rely on the love that God has for us. So if you're a child of God today, if you are a follower of Jesus, we just have to keep reminding ourselves of this, that literally nothing can separate you from his love. That's what Scripture says. Not your failures, not our successes, not death, not disease, not our fears, not our insecurities, not COVID, not the government, not taxes. No circumstance, no personal action, nothing can separate us from the love of God. And in the deepest parts of our hearts, God wants us to know that and to be reminded of that and to see that at Christmas. And the more questions that pop up, the more we lean back into that verse. Right? Because here's the thing. Trusting God's love for us is what frees us to love as we have been loved. What does God want for us more than anything? He wants us to know and experience his love, and he wants that love to flow through our lives. He wants us to become people of love. That's the goal. Why? That's what he's like. That's who he is. And as his life shows up in our life more and more love will come from us. As I think the questions that we wrestle through this Christmas, they have to be this, I think. Do I really believe and can I really trust in all that God has done? See, he's laid it out. All in. All in. He's held nothing back. When I look at that all, do I trust it? Do I believe it's for me? Or do I believe that God did all that to destroy me and he's against me? And I don't care if you've been in the church for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, or if this is your first time in a church ever. All of us ask those questions. What is God really like, and can I trust him? So whether this is your first time wrestling that through and landing on a conclusion of choosing to trust the love of God, saying yes to his offer of salvation through Christ, which if you've never done that, I would highly encourage you to. Jesus lived the rest of his life on the planet perfectly, beat the law, did what we never could do, died innocently on a cross, rose victoriously, rose and beat death. And then what he does is he offers us his life, the life that will change us from the inside out. If you've never said yes to that, all you have to do is say, Lord, I'm sorry. Sorry for what I've done. Thank you for choosing to love me. I'm in. I'm in. I want to follow you. I surrender. I'm in. I believe it. You guys, some of us, we need to return to that. We need to come back and remember it. This new circumstance, the new thing you're in the middle of, the new question marks that just popped up, none of that changes the love that God has for you. Do you believe that today? Not 5 years ago or 10 or 20. Now. That this Christmas is for you in a fresh way now. And there's a God who loves you. Loves you deeply. As the band comes out, will you wrestle that through and be as honest as you can with the God who hears and knows our hearts, the one who came from heaven to earth. Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you for offering us and giving us a love that we could never muster up on our own. Thanks for showing us what love looks like. Lord, thank you for forgiving us completely, willingly, eagerly. You have chosen to show us mercy. And Lord, thank you for not stopping there, but choosing to make us people of love. Lord, sorry for the ways that we fail in that. Will you keep molding us to make us more and more loving in the ways that you are? Today, God, help us. Help us to know you, to know the love that you have for us, and to rely on that in a real and a daily way.